Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we are looking at Acid Pro 11. We're going to be getting some MIDI up and running. One of the first things you need to figure out how to do. How do you load a synth? How do you give that synth MIDI? How do you get the audio from that synth so that you can affect it with effects? And we're also going to be looking a little bit at Morph Pads and how you can automate those because they really open up quite the number of options. And yeah, that's what we're going to be checking out. So if you're confused about MIDI, hopefully this will put a lot of those things to rest. So to load a synthesizer, there are a few ways. This is a blank project, by the way. You can first come up to Insert and choose to add a soft synth. So that's one way you could do it. I tend to avoid these menus though. So the way I normally do it is I right click in this area where you add the tracks. And I add a MIDI track because you need a MIDI track to talk to your synthesizer. So if you do that, it'll load up a MIDI track, but it will also load up a corresponding bus track. So if these are invisible, you may have show bus tracks off. That's like your master, and also any MIDI track will have a corresponding bus track where the MIDI device will send the audio to. I know that might sound a little confusing, but if you're missing this, you just right click and go to show bus tracks. And what it's done now is up here, it loads, if we pull this down just a little bit more, a synth. So there's a synth right here. And if we play, and it's going to the bus track. Now, one of these bus tracks is for the synth. So you can see there's the synth, it comes through. So the synth itself receives MIDI, but it puts out audio that we hear. That audio has to go somewhere. So where does it go? It goes to this here bus track because MIDI tracks don't deal with audio. Audio tracks deal with audio. So they do this all for you when you add the synth, but it's important to understand that this is going here. And if you look in your mixer down here, which by the way, if this is not there, you go to View and go to Mixer Console, and you'll see it appear down here, the entire mixer. So, okay. Now we understand how the routing works. This is where our synth has been loaded. If we want to change our synth, we need to click here and go to Insert Soft Synth because it by default loads this one, which you're probably not going to want to use. So we're going to go to Insert Soft Synth, and I'm going to load up a synth called Vita. It comes with Acid. So we're going to go ahead and double click it. It loads it up. This is like just a cool sampler. It's picked like bits of this chopped up loop for us to use. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay down a kick drum as an example. And if you're missing some of these things, Acid actually comes with some instruments and a bunch of sounds. And there's a separate installer if you want to install those things. And I recommend you do because you've got them. So why not? So you go up to Help and go down to Download Instruments in Loop Collections. And you'll see all the stuff that you can download and install. So if you're missing stuff, make sure you do that. It's a free thing. So do it. All right. So from here, let's write in some MIDI. Now there's two types of MIDI clip editing going on here. The first one is what you see before you, where I'm actually able to like draw right in the track. And the first click you do will add a MIDI clip if there's no MIDI clip there. So I just added a MIDI clip. But let's say that you're in the other view. So if you right click here, there's an Enable Inline MIDI Editing, or you can hit G. If you click that, it'll look like this. Now, if it's your first time, you probably have this view. And if you want to edit MIDI in it, you need to right click on your MIDI clip and go to Clip Properties. And it'll open up a giant piano roll and you can, drag notes in and do all that kind of stuff. This is often overkill. And a lot of the times I think you'll find the other way a little more convenient. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to right click on this region and I'm going to go down to Enable Inline MIDI Editing. But while we're here, I want to point out something important. If you don't have it ticked, you should tick it. Activate Morph Pads. We're going to use this later. You'll see. But just so you know, you right click and it's going to show up here. So if you're in the other menu, so if we go back to Enable Inline MIDI Editing like this, here it is, you'll see that it is no longer here. I believe if we click outside of it, no, that doesn't work either. Yeah, you have to click while you're in this area because you need to tell Acid you want to use the Morph Pads and activate Morph Pads. So that's where that's at. Make sure it's ticked so you can do it. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Inline, and this is just a MIDI editor. By the way, scrolling your mouse wheel zooms you in and out. And if you hold down Alt and scroll, actually, does Alt even matter that much? No, you just have to be focused in the window. So, okay, let's place some stuff. So if you click drag, we can place notes. I'm using a sampler that has specific note values that it uses, in particular C5. If you see, the other ones don't make notes because they're not mapped to the sampler. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to click and add in these kick drums here. There's other sounds on other keys. If we zoom up a little bit, backwards kicks, some hats. Maybe we add some hats in here. And let's just scroll over. Like so, perhaps. And let's say that we want to loop this region so we can hear what's going on. Well, if you right click at the top here, there is a loop playback. Now mine's already on, yours might not. It's also down here, by the way. You could just click that. So we can loop playback. And let's say we want to move the loop region. Well, there's two ways to do this. Let's say that it's off the screen and you want to see it. Well, you can go to zoom to loop region. It'll zoom you out so you can see it. But a more convenient way of doing this, if you right click, at least at this stage, this is easier. If you right click on this loop area and go set loop region to view, it'll just, set it for you. So that's pretty nice. So that's what I'm going to use. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move this playhead over. By the way, if you just click, it puts the playhead. But if you click drag, it will place a note. That's how the behavior is. Because you might think when you click, it'll place a note, but it's not until you drag does a note get placed. Okay, we have a basic loop. I mean, it's not the greatest loop ever, but I just want to show you how to set this up. Because you can get in, a synthesizer that plays like a piano, all these other things. In fact, let's add one more just to show you. So let's insert another audio track, or not an audio track. Let's get rid of that. I don't want an audio track. I want another MIDI track. And this time, instead of drums, we will add another soft synth. We will, again, I'll hit V to go to Vita. We'll just pick Vita. And this one is a sampler. We could choose something different, like, I don't know. Let's go for an E bass. And I could put down a note, add a clip region, add a note, and away I go. If I wanted to do this, I could. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this since I'm not going to use it. And let's look at this now and say, I want to add effects to these drum sounds that I have going on. Let's say that that's what I want to do. Well, in order to do that, we need to come down to its corresponding bus track because that's where the audio is. So here it is coming in. You can also see it over here in the mixer area. And if I click on the track effects, and I'm on the wrong one. This is the one I want. I'm able to add track effects. So here you can click the effect chain and you can pick an effect. I have a lot of them because I have a lot of other software, but you're going to have the MAGIX stuff by default. But what I want to show you is the Morph Pads because the Morph Pads are pretty cool. So you notice the Morph Pads are ticked here and we want to go ahead and edit those Morph Pads. Now, the Morph Pads are a collection of effects. They're kind of like presets of effects, and then you can just move one control, and it will do a whole lot of stuff. And some of them are extremely useful. There's some very fancy ones, but the fundamental ones are honestly like super handy to just have and use. So I'm going to go up here to View. So these Morph Pads live on the master level. So all tracks interact with these Morph Pads. So they live in a master menu. That's why they're over here. So we're going to go to View, and we're going to look for Morph Pads right here. Click that. And you can see here's our Morph Pads. There's no pads currently loaded. I'm going to create a group, and all our tracks that can have these effects added will be added here. Now, you can create your own patches. You can do all this crazy stuff. But if you click up here, you can actually just add some basic stuff. So let's just say, for example, we want a low pass filter to go. If I were to play this and move it, oh, I need to send it to a target. So I wanted to affect that Vita sampler I have, right? So this is what I want to be affected. You can actually pick which tracks you would like to have changed and targeted, and you can have a a bunch more Morph Pads. So it could get pretty fancy. There's entire banks you can load. You can lock Morph Pads together and have them move in the same way with one controller signal. Like there's just stuff you can do. But now if I, with this targeted, move this, you can hear it doing its thing. We can see our effects over here. So we've got a low pass on right now. And again, you could add more patches. I'm going to go ahead and delete this though, because I don't want to get crazy and add a bunch of things. But there are options living here for you. But a lot of the times, though, you're going to want to have this thing move for you during the track. You don't want to sit here and have to move it every time. That's going to be ridiculous. So in order to do that, we need to go to the master channel, which is the last guy here. You can even see it get highlighted when we click it. And we're going to automate it. And we want to do automation. I almost clicked the record button. So yeah, you click this will arm it for automation. And now when we move this, it will automatically record this movement. As you can see, it's already getting values. So let's say right here, I want it to be off. And then I'll move it over to here. And I would like it to be on. And you can see it interpolates. So now when I play it, it'll just automatically do that. If we turn this off and we put this back in the loop region. There you go. And it's got to be on the master channel because, again, this is a master level event. So let's say that, hey, I'd like to do like my own mouse movement instead. Well, instead of setting points, I find it more useful to set points and move it to precisely where I want. But if you'd like to have a complicated move that you'd like to just move the mouse for, or you could hook this up to like a knob or something, you can click this and simply move it while it's recording. And hit play. Grab it. You can see the data gets written. So there you go. Crazy move. We could try out some different effects. Maybe we do a reverb instead. And these are the basic ones. We could go to something like fancier. Let's go for a phaser. And this is the chain that it's going through. But anyways, yeah, you can do a lot of stuff. Get your loops going, set it up through here. This is how you load all the stuff. That's how you get the automation going. That's Morph Pads. And from here, it's really up to you. You just got to pick the sound, sequence it, and get a song going. But at first, it can be a little confusing to navigate your way around. But once you know how everything's connected, it's pretty easy to get rolling. If you have any questions about this, feel free to let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.